This is going to be a fucked up episode.
And in my mother's womb was fashioned to be flesh in the time of 10 months, being compacted in blood of the seed of man.
That's right.
Of the seed of man.
The word seed is sperm, and sperm comes through having sex. It's shut out of your father's rod.
Right.
Put it in layman terms, in his penis. That's right. That means a man put his penis in a woman and bust off in it.
Then the angel said to him, "Take out the entrails of this fish, and lay up his heart and his gall and his liver for thee. For these are necessary for useful medicines."
The rest of the chapters of the book of Esther,
Go ahead.
which are found neither in the Hebrew nor in the Chaldee.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, not far from the redneck Mecca. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is being annoying and crawling around on the desk and fucking up my document. Ash is curled up on the bookshelf nearby. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and it's cats. Get over it. This is an Ethiopian Apocrypha episode where should be Skullbeard and I reading from a couple of chapters of the Ethiopian Apocrypha, but my recording software fucked up and didn't record anything. So you're just getting me. Next episode will be a news episode. I do have a little bit of good news about that. So it's not quite as horrible as it could be, even if I am doing this solo. The reason that this won't be quite as fucked up as it could be, even though it is just me for this episode, is that as Skullbeard and I were going through and reading it this time, I made sure to fill out little bits and figure out, okay, well, we know what this word means, so rather than us keep reading the Rastafarian term, we'll put it in English. And I got a pretty good sized list, and I've gone through and corrected all of them. So it'll make this slightly more comprehensible than it would have been when Skullbeard and I were reading it. And I've gotten some really good ideas from going through this on how to fix things for the next book. And the rest of this book. Skullbeard and I actually managed, we sat down, we recorded for 3 hours. We knocked out all of this book. It was great. I was like, man, I've got all this, I've got enough shit recorded until November, so I don't have to worry about this regardless of what my work schedule is. And then it turns out none of it fucking recorded. I don't know why. It has to do, I'm guessing, with the latest update to Skype. There's nothing useful on Skype's website, nor is there anything useful in the software which I use to record. So I'm going to try and figure out how to deal with this, and hopefully the next time we do an Apocrypha episode, I will be able to have Skullbeard on and we'll have the recording. I won't know until I get it sorted out. I mean, some of the software out there for Skype is like $100 or more, and I can't afford that. So we'll just have to see how it goes. And I know there's Zencaster, I think, is a software a lot of people were using, but it just kept fucking up so much that they all quit. So I'm not sure what everybody's using now. I'm in an atheist podcaster group, so I've asked there. And I'm in a couple other podcasting groups now that I think about it. I'll ask in there and see what people have to say. Anyways, here comes the fun part. Not really. Yesterday was the memorial service for my father. Now, I was kind of dreading it, since I would be running into my stepmother, who I'm not terribly fond of. I mean, she was more than happy on numerous occasions to say, well, I didn't want to be a mother again, but you came with your father, so I had to take you, which pretty much tells you she doesn't want me around. But still, probably be the last time I'd see my stepbrother and his kids and his wife. So figured I'd go, just have to see what things are like. So my eldest brother picks me up and we go. And now let me say at the outset, my family's Lutheran. And this was held at the Lutheran church in town. And I was stunned because it wasn't anything like any of the funerals I've ever been to that I can recall. Now, mind you, the last funeral I went to was over 30 years ago, when my grandmother was buried. No, my grandfather. I'm sorry. I went to that funeral too. So, and that was early 90s. Somewhere around 95, 96. I don't remember exactly when now. Anyways, so as part of, getting ready for all this, I knew that the latest season of BoJack Horseman had dropped on Netflix. And if you've not seen the series BoJack Horseman, BoJack is the star of a fictional 90s TV sitcom who, he's not really had much of a career in the years since the sitcom was canceled. And he lives sort of a dissipated life, It's a great show. It jabs, a lot of Hollywood shit. And well, I kind of like the character of BoJack. He's, an anti-hero that you have to like, even though you really shouldn't, but you do because, he's living the dream, as it were. So, anyways, in this episode, or in this new season, he's doing the funeral for his mother, who passed away, I think, at the end of the last season, or I don't remember because I didn't rewatch the seasons because I didn't realize it was dropping when it did. And I just happened to read a review of the episode where it does the funeral. So I'm like, well, BoJack's mother was a pretty horrific person. My father was a pretty horrific person. So I'm going to watch this to see how he handles it. And of course, he handles it hugely inappropriately, as you would expect from a character like him. At one point, he's standing there giving his eulogy, the coffin's next to him, and he says, "Mom, knock once if you think I should shut up." Of course, Mom being dead doesn't knock. So, I watch it and I'm like, this is pretty awesome. And I go to Dad's memorial service. And it's a typical Sunday church service with communion. The only difference is that the pastor presiding over the service mentions my father a bit in the beginning, and then my father is mentioned again during a sermon, which is supposed to pass for the eulogy, but really doesn't. And it was really weird because when the pastor starts the service, he says, I'm not going to talk a lot about Don. That's my father. All of you have stories about him, and I want you to tell one another about those stories. But, what? Why aren't you going to talk about this man? That's why we're here. And then they do, like I said, it's a straight church service all the way through, and they have a communion. And when they're doing the communion, the family is all seated in the front row, so we're the first ones up for the communion. And we go back to our seats, and the next row goes up. There was probably 100 people there, I think. And I'm sitting next to my stepbrother. He, I've mentioned on the podcast before, has a doctorate in divinity or religious studies. And presently he's the president of a Methodist university. And I asked him about that because, he's Lutheran. And I'm like, what, did you convert? And he says, no, I didn't convert. They pay better than my previous job. So It's like, okay, that, to me, that kind of sounds like your religious convictions aren't all that firm if you're going and running the presidency of another university of a different denomination, but what the fuck ever, right? And anyway, so they do the communion thing, and he and I are sitting beside one another as the second group goes up, and I lean over to him and I say, Is that gluten-free Jesus or not? And he busts out laughing, he quickly controls himself. And he's like, well, that was an option. And I have not been in a church service in close to 20 years now. So this was a real eye-opener for me because while I have been an atheist since I was in high school, I never really paid any attention to the church services when I went to them. It was all just this routine that we did, and I didn't think about it. And this time I was actually paying attention to it. So let me go over some of the things I noticed. Okay, it starts out, with a blessing, which, fine, that's kind of what you'd expect. And then it has a Thanksgiving for baptism, talking about, hey, if you've been baptized, you're going to go to heaven. Really doesn't matter what the hell else you do. Then we did a hymn, which was Lift High the Cross. That seemed a little, I don't know. You know what I'm saying. Talking about death and suffering at a memorial service. A little cruel there. Because my father apparently did not go peacefully. He suffered pretty badly. And had trouble accepting... Well, I don't want to say he had trouble accepting his fate. He was definitely having cognition problems towards the end based on the stories that I was told. And whether that was because of age, the disease, or the pain meds he was on, I have no idea. But, like at one point, my stepmother said later that he was there in bed and he, for some reason, decided that he had to get something out of the garage to fix something, which was not broken and there was no part in the garage like he needed. And he started to head that way, and my stepmother, tried to stop him, and he was like going to shove her or something, and then the home nurse walked up and said something to my dad, and that caused him to snap out of it, and he went, back to his bed. She said one day he did not want to go to bed, and she had to get the neighbor to help force him into bed. So I don't know. And then, they do this whole standard greeting thing, and they do this, thing, or it's like their prayer of the day. O God of grace and glory, we remember before you today our brother Don. We thank you for giving him us to know and to love as a companion in our pilgrimage on earth. And then it goes on and on and on about, how he's been swallowed up in victory. Blah, blah, blah. And then, they do this, Bible reading. And now here's this I found odd. They had my stepbrother's son do the Bible reading. It just seemed odd that they would have the step-grandchildren rather than his actual grandson do it. I'm not fussing about it. I don't know if they asked my nephew if he wanted to do it and he said no, or what, but whatever. It just seemed a little odd that none of the family, biological family, I should say, actually participated in the service, whereas, the step-grandchildren did. And I don't know the reason behind that. I didn't ask because I wasn't about to stir up trouble. So they read from Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 7, which talk about King Uzzah dying. Whoever Uzzah was. And, it's, basically saying, oh, well, because you accepted God, your sins have been cast out, and you're going to heaven, sort of. And then we, of course, did Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And while we're doing this, I can't help but think, because they do the call and response kind of thing, The pastor says a couple of verses, and then the congregation says a couple of verses on and on. And while they're doing this, I can't help but think about the Pink Floyd song from the album Sheep, where it's a parody of Psalm 23. And, here's the lines that come to mind when I'm thinking of that song. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me down to lie. Through pastures green, he leadeth me the silent water by. With bright knives, he releaseth my soul. He maketh me to hang on hooks in high places. He converteth me to lamb cutlets. For lo, he hath great power and great hunger. When cometh the day, we lowly ones, through quiet reflection and great dedication, master the art of karate. Lo, we shall rise up, and then we'll make the bugger's eyes water. Yeah, so, that was in my head while we're doing this thing. And then, they do this reading, from Romans, it's Romans 8:31 to 39. And it's talking about God condemning his son, and, for your sake we are being killed all day long. We are accounted as sheep to be slaughtered. And boy, if that doesn't just remind you of that thing from Floyd. And then blah, blah, blah. We do another call and response. And then we read from the Holy Gospel, Matthew 25, verses 14 to 29. And this is where, I really started twigging that things are just more than a wee bit off, okay? Because, while I was familiar with the story, I didn't recognize the verses when they gave out the name and number. But it's about the guy who decides he's going to go on a journey. So he summons his slaves. Yes, we don't use the version that says servants. We say slaves because that's what they fucking were. And, this is where he gives the slaves some money and says, invest it while I'm gone. Well, the first guy invests him, makes money. Second guy does the same thing. The, third one, however, he, just buries the money in the yard because when the guy returns and says, well, what all have you done with my money? And the first guy says, well, I doubled it. And the second guy says, I made a little more than what you gave me. And the third guy says, well, I know you tend to treat people like shit who, displease you, so I buried it. That way it didn't matter what happened. When you came back, I could give you exactly what you gave me. And, let me read this section because it's the last couple of verses. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So a thief. So I was afraid. And I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master replied, You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return, I would have received what was my own with interest. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. Now that's a very Republican verse, don't you think? If you're poor, you're losing everything. But if you're rich, you're getting more. And why would they say this? I mean, I cannot fathom why this would be used at a funeral of anybody, And it leaves me wondering, are they, whoever put this together, are they trying to say my father was an asshole? I mean, I wouldn't dispute that, but I don't know. I have to wonder if this isn't something that that the church put, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America put together and, hands out for people doing funerals, and they just cut and paste things in it to fit the individual who's died. I could be wrong. I don't know. And then, the pastor, who the hell, I don't even know who these assholes are. Yeah, the pastor talked a little sermon. He didn't say anything about my dad, and this was not the main sermon. And then we did the Apostles' Creed. And we did another, and then we had the eulogy. Now, the eulogy was written by the former pastor of the church. This guy was pastor when my dad moved down here. And, my dad was friends with this guy, has been with him for, known him for 40 years, roughly. And, so, the thing that I could not fathom is, again, this eulogy is like what the pastor said, the current presiding pastor. This pastor is the former pastor of the church. He's now retired. He talks about, he says basically, yeah, I could tell you a lot of stories about Don, but I'm not going to. I want you to talk with one another and tell each other stories about him. That was odd, I thought. He talked about the shit, some of the things he did. He mentioned, the stuff my dad did for the church. And, it was definitely a commercial for the church, more than it was saying anything about my father, because, it talked about the programs that my father helped with and, the Bible study. And they were really impressed that my father had completed a 2-year Bethel Bible study. And that was like something remarkable. The fact of the matter is that it wasn't really all that remarkable, because that was the routine at the church in Ohio that we went to. They offered that all the time. And my mother did that as well, at the same time as my father. The one thing he did, when he talked about my dad in the church, he kept talking about how my father was a great listener, which I found hysterical, because my father quite frequently would deny I had told him something when I most assuredly had. So, anyways, most of this eulogy, however, the bulk of it was the story that the pastor told. The story, as the pastor set out from the beginning, was not actually about my father, even though he was going to say it was about my father. And he said he did this because the story reminded him of my father. Now, why you would tell a story about somebody that, in this situation that wasn't about them, I don't know. Anyways, the story was this guy, whom, was not my father, but he said was my father, bought a donkey for $100. Well, when the farmer came to deliver the donkey, the farmer says, I've got some bad news. Donkey's dead and I've already spent the money. So, the man in the story says, well, that's all right. Give me the body. The farmer's like, oh, that's kind of weird. So he gives him the body. And a couple of weeks later, he runs into the guy and says, what'd you do with the body? And the guy, who was not my father, but, was given my father's name for this story, says, oh, well, I held a raffle for the donkey. And I made $3,000. And farmer's like, weren't the people disappointed? And my father says, no, only the guy who had the winning ticket, and he felt better after I gave him his $2 back. Which, of course, it elicited a big laugh from everybody. And I'm like, wow. So, you're basically saying my father was a con man. Whether you intended that or not, I don't know. But that's the implication. Why you would do this, I don't know. So, and at this point, we did the communion. And, this is where I was like, whoa, I have never really paid attention to this shit before. So, you have the presiding minister and the assistant minister. And they get up there, and the presiding minister has the cup and everything, and he does the blessings over it. And he starts doing the whole, and on the night he was betrayed, Jesus stood up before his disciples and poured a glass of wine and said, this is my blood, drink. And I'm like, and I'm listening to that whole thing, and I'm going, boy, there's really like a homosexual subtext to this that I've never noticed before. The other thing that popped into my head was that meme, the Last Supper, where, Jesus pours wine, the caption says, Jesus pours the wine, says, this is my blood. Jesus takes the bread, says, this is my body. Jesus goes to open a jar of mayo, and Judas says, I'm going to stop you right there, Jesus. That was all I could think of, but I didn't. I was severely tempted to lean over to my stepbrother and go, takes a jar of mayo, because I figured my stepbrother would get that, but I didn't, on the off chance that it might offend people. So, then we do the communion thing, and that's when I made the, is that gluten-free Jesus? Comment to my stepbrother. And I also got to thinking at this point, wow. The Catholic Church has this big hullabaloo about how much wheat or gluten is actually in the communion wafer. Because if it doesn't have the right percentage, it's not Jesus. And I got to thinking, the species of wheat they're using for the communion wafer is probably different than the species of wheat that would have been around in biblical times. Assuming, of course, Jesus ever actually did any of that shit, which he supposedly did. Because, that ritual does not fit at all with any of the Jewish practices of that era and that location. In fact, it's very antithetical to those practices. And the other thing I thought about is, the communion wafer looks nothing. It is nothing like what, unleavened bread in that time would have been like. So, if you can get away with using a different species of wheat, and you can put it in a different form, then, what would have been there? Why does it matter what the gluten content is? That's just fucking weird. So we did the communion, and, and I fucked up when I did the communion thing, because you're supposed to dip your wafer into the wine, and I drank from the cup. Oops. I was a bad boy. And then we did another prayer. And then they did a flag presentation, because my father was a corpsman in the Navy during Korea. He never left his states during that time, except for half an hour. Well, more than half an hour, obviously. But he was only in Korea for 30 minutes. He left the States to go on a run to pick up wounded and bring them back from Korea to the U.S. And my dad never really talked about Korea. He had a few stories, but he didn't tell much of anything. Of course, Dad never talked about a lot of anything, which, and my eldest brother, who should have more of a beef with our father than I do, because he, while my father was verbally abusive to me, he was physically abusive and verbally abusive to my eldest brother. My eldest brother, though, when they did the whole flag ceremony, which, since there was not a coffin, my father had been cremated, and the ashes weren't even there at the service. They were at my stepmother's house somewhere. They unfurled the flag, showed it to everybody, and then folded it back up exactly the way it would have been folded before and gave it to my eldest brother, who, got really upset. And I was just like, wow. Because the guys who did the flag ceremony were, in their 60s and a little unstable. They were obviously suffering from arthritis and had trouble with their motor skills. And then, they said a final thing and sang a hymn, and we all left. And then we all had a lunch in the church afterwards. And then I went back to my stepmother's house because, I'm being driven around my eldest brother, and I don't really have a choice. So we go back to the house, and, my stepmother reads us the will, which, she gets everything because she's still alive, and that's, understandable. Of course, she says there's not really anything to get. That claims that my father was very bad at handling money. Now, I know this is not true. My eldest brother used to work for my dad, and they heard, he overheard my dad talking to his investment banker, all the different ways they could hide the money so he wouldn't have to pay it to my mother as alimony. And anyways, there was some nice family stuff afterwards, so that was good. And then I went home and I called a friend of mine to tell her about this, and she was raised Catholic. And she said, it sounds like you had a Catholic ceremony. That's the way we do things. And I was just like, wow, that's really fucking weird. I know Lutherans are Catholics light, but that just doesn't sound like it should be for a wedding or funeral. And she's like, I'll tell you what, because her dad's about as bad as mine, if not worse. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna have some things to say at my father's funeral. So, but anyways, that is that. All right, that's enough of my family drama bullshit. Let's get to the Ethiopian Apocrypha. And him dead quitting him children who were small, and them grew up like unto them father taught them. Them kept them house order, and them would keep all them kindred, and them wouldn't make poor ones cry, nor widows, nor a child whose mother and father dead upon him. Them would forever Jehovah, and them would give them money alms for poor ones, and them would keep all the trust them father told them, and them would calm the child whose mother and father dead upon them, and widows in them troubled time, and them would be them mother and father. Them would make them cast from persons' hand who wrong them, and calm them from all the downsturbance and sadness that found them. And them lived 5 years while them did thus. So I'm guessing that they spent 5 years doing this. Not that, these people live, their entire life was only 5 years. After this, the Khaledan's king, Tseredudian, and we knew who that was at one point in time, and I have no idea who it is now, came, him destroyed all them country, and him captured Maccabees' children and destroyed all them villages, and him plundered all them money. Them lived firmed up in all evil work and sin and adultery, insult and greed, and not thinking of them creator. Yet persons who don't live firmed up in Jehovah's law and him command and worship idols seized them also and took them toward them country. So apparently, this is the Babylonian captivity, maybe? Let me do a check. No, and looking, that doesn't seem right for who it could have been. Them eat what a beast bit and the blood and the carcass, and what a scavenger beat and cast. All that Jehovah don't love. Yet them have no order from all the true commands written in Orit. And I have no idea why they use the term Orit there. Because the only definition I can find for that, doesn't really match up with, the context of this. Them don't know Jehovah, them creator, who sent them forth from them mothers' wombs and forward them by what are due were them medicine. Them marry from them aunt and them father, why for, I think, them stepmother and them go toward robbery and evil thing and sin and adultery, yet them have no order in judgment time, and them work all evil work, and them marry them aunts and them sistren, and them have no law. Sounds like a lot of the southern United States. And all them roads are dark and slippery, and them work are sin and adultery. But those Maccabees' children would keep in all them order. Them wouldn't eat what a scavenger beat, nor what dead and lodged. Them wouldn't work all the work that the Khaledan's children work. For the many works are evil that weren't written in this book, that sinners work, and doubters and criminals and betrayers totally filled of robbery and sin and pagans' children. Did they eat the pagans' children? Is that how they got filled with them? All the work them creator Jehovah love aren't there alongside them. And again, them would worship an idol called Baal Figor. Them would trust it like unto them creator Jehovah when it were deaf and dumb, for it are the idol that a person hand work. For it are the person hand work that a smith worked, who worked silver and gold, that have no breath nor knowledge. And it had nothing that it sight up nor hear. It don't drink. Oh, Fuzznuts. Why did you do this, you little shit brains? The dumbass jumped on the keyboard and moved everything. I'll start that again. And again, them would worship an idol called Baal Figor. Them would trust it like unto them creator, Jehovah, when it were deaf and dumb. For it are the idol that a person hand worked. For it are the person hand work that a smith worked, who worked silver and gold, that have no breath nor knowledge. And it had nothing that it sight up nor hear. It don't eat nor drink. It don't kill nor save. It don't plant nor uproot. It don't harm it enemy, nor it benefit it friend. It don't impoverish nor honor. It will be a hindrance for mislead the Khaledan's persons who were lazy. Yet it don't chastise nor forgive. Jehovah enemy, Tseredudian. That name is so damn familiar. I am going to look it up. I have found a clue. as to who that name might belong to. Somebody has done a partial English translation that is better than what I have here, but it is not the complete book, or books. So, anyways, there is an interesting footnote in one of the translation pages for the thing that gives some details. This name is a curiosity, as ordinarily the Maccabee revolt is associated with the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanius, who is otherwise unmentioned in this text. The meaning of this name is a subject of debate. It has been suggested that this name appears to represent the folk memory of the aforementioned tyrant. Some coinage from his reign give his dual capital cities and are noted with the inscription Tyre and Sidon, which appears to constitute the transliteration of this name into Ge'ez and later Amharic. This would also account for the pairing of these two Punic cities later in the text. Alternatively, since the Ethiopian Synaxarion calls that nation of Syria Saranan, this name could also be a cognate for the king of Syria. So, that is that. And I'm going to have to do some more with this guy. Or, track this guy down that did this. So there we are. Jehovah enemy to Sidon, who were arrogant, appointed them who veil and falsehood priests for him idols. Him would sacrifice for them and pour the grapes for them. And it would seem for him that them eat and drink. And while it dawned, him would give them cows and donkeys and heifers, and him would sacrifice morning and evening, and him would eat from that defiled sacrifice. And again, him would downsturb and obligate other persons that them might sacrifice for him idols. Yet it weren't only that them do it. Upon the time them cite up Maccabees' children, that them were handsome and that them worship them Creator Jehovah, the idols priests loved them that might mislead them for a sacrifice, and for eat from that hated sacrifice, but these honored Maccabees' children refused them. As them keep them father command, and as them have firmed up in work and goodly work, and as them totally for our Jehovah, it failed them for agree. And I think for our is fear. Upon the time them bound them and insulted them and robbed them, them told for the king Sidon that them refused sacrifice and bowing, Fuzznuts, get off the damn keyboard, for him idols. Let me start that sentence again. Them told for the king Sidon that them refused sacrifice and bowing for him idols. And because this thing the king vexed, him were sad and commanded that them might bring them, and them brought and stood them before him, and the king told them for him idols, sacrifice for me idols. In other words, the king said, okay, find these assholes who aren't worshiping my idols and bring them to me. And them spoke and told him, and all won't answer thee in this thing, and all won't sacrifice for thy defiled idols. Non-defiled idols they would apparently do, but not defiled ones. That's a little strange, don't you think? And again, him would downsturb and obligate other persons that them might sacrifice for him idols. Yet it weren't that only them do it. Upon the time them cite up Maccabees' children that them were handsome and that them worship them Creator Jehovah, the idols priests loved that them might lease them for the sacrifice. Did I read that? I don't know. Yes, I must have, because yes, I did. And them spoke and told him, and all won't answer thee in this thing, and all won't sacrifice for thy defiled idols. Him frightened them by works that abounded, yet him couldn't able for them have disciplined them reasoning, believing in Jehovah. Him flamed a fire and cast them in fire, and them gave them bodies for Jehovah. After them dead, them arose and were sight up for him at night, drawing them swords when him had reclined upon his lordship throne, and him totally forayed. Yeah, that's got to be fear. Some variation of it before. Me sirs, tell me aright, what should me do for you? Don't take me body in death, that me might do all thou commanded me. Them told him all that are due for him, while them said, think that Jehovah were thy creator, and Jehovah are there who shall dismiss from this thy kingdom, where thou art arrogant, and who shall lower thee toward Gehenna of fire, with thy father Diablos, when all worshipped Creator Jehovah. Without a iniquity living that all wrong thee, and when all bowed for him in fearing him, Jehovah-ness, like unto thou burned all in fire. Thou will fallish and all that hardship by that also. Man, that's an opaque sentence. For him are who created all, earth and heaven and sea and all that are within she. And for him are who created moon and sun and stars, and for him who created all the creation are Jehovah. For there are no other creators without him, nor heaven. For him are who able for all, and for there are nothing that fail him. As him are who kill and who save, who whip in tribulation and who forgive, when all bowed for him in fear in Jehovah, like unto thou burned all in a fire, thou will fall thy hardship by that, them told him. And as him are who rule the earth and heaven, there are none who escape from him authority. There are none from the creation him created who departed from him command. Apart from thou who are a criminal, and criminals like unto thee, whose reasonings thy father Sethion hid, and thou and those thy priests and thy idols will descend together toward Gehenna, where there are no exits up till eternity. Thy teacher is Satan, who taught thee this evil work, that thou might do an evil thing upon all. Yet as it is, aren't only thou who do this, you will descend toward Gehenna together. For thou make thy wrath self like unto thy creator Jehovah, yet thou didn't know Jehovah who created thee. And thou art arrogant in thy idols and thy handwork, up till Jehovah make thee wretched. Him shall convict thee upon all thy sin and iniquity that thou worked in this world. Woe for you who don't know Jehovah who created you, for thy idols who are like unto thee, and for thee and for you have that you might regret a regret that won't profit upon the time you were sad, being seized in Sheol difficulty. And woe for thee, for you who don't keep his word and his law, you will have no exit from she up until eternity. Thy priests and thou who sacrifice for them like unto your creator Jehovah, for thy idols who have no breath nor soul, who won't revenge and destroy him who did an evil thing upon them, nor do a goodly thing for him who did a goodly thing for them. Woe for you who sacrifice for them, for they are a person's hand's work where Satan lives, lodging there for mislead lazy ones, reasoning like unto thee, that him might lower you toward Gehenna of fire, and the priests who serve demons commanded for you and your idols. As you don't know that there are nothing that will profit you, you wrong an error. I'm sure that should be you make an error. As for the animals that Jehovah created be food for you, and dogs and beasts, them are better than you, for besides one death there are no more condemnation upon them. So, it's better to be an animal than a sinful person, because the animals just die, sinful people go to hell. Having spoken this, they went and were hidden from him. But that Sedan lodged when him trembled, seized by a firm fright, and fright didn't quit him up until it dawned. And him lived firmed up in reasoning, malice, and arrogance. And as iron have been called firm, like unto Daniel sighted up upon him kingdom, him turned in people's countries in him area. Him live firmed up in evil, and all him laziness, and in downsturbing persons. And him totally destroy what all spoke formerly, and him eat a person's money. For him are diligent for evil, like unto him his father Diablos, who firmed up him collar of reasoning, and him destroy what remained with him army. Him say, me era became like unto the sun era, yet him don't know Jehovah, that him were him creator. And in him reasoning, him think that the sun are found from him. So, okay. To recap this part, since I actually understand it, and you may not from the way it's read, dude kills these people who may or may not have been the 7 family members that we read about in a previous book. You know, the ones that were actually turned out to be the Pleiades. He kills them because they won't worship the way he thinks they should worship. They appear to him as ghosts and say, if you don't mend your ways, you're going to go to hell. Scares the shit out of him. But for some reason, he still keeps doing the shit he's been doing. In fact, he becomes so egotistical that he thinks he is the source of the sun. Him arise in power, him camp in tribe of Zabulon, Lot, and begin a formation in Macedonia, and him receive food from Samaria, and them give him presents from Samaria. Him camp in no man's region, and him reach up till Sedona, and him cast attacks upon Acadia, and him elevate him collar of reasoning up till the flowing sea, and him return and send messengers up till Idiki Sea. I have no idea what those could be. And likewise, him elevate him collar of reasoning up till heaven. Him live firmed up in being arrogant and evil. Yet him don't have humbling him raw self. And his path are toward darkness and slipperiness, and toward crime and being arrogant, and toward shedding blood and tribulation. And all his work are what Jehovah hates. Him do like unto robbery and evil, and sin teacher Diablos taught him. Him make a child cry whose mother and father are dead upon him. And him aren't nice for a poor one. So you're typical Republican. Basically. And him terrorized and destroyed people's kings by his authority. And he ruled enemies' chiefs, and he ruled many peoples, and he taxed them like unto him loved. Even if him destroyed, him didn't quit. There are no persons whom him didn't snatch, beginning from Xerxes seas up till Airico Sea, wherever that is. Him would bow for idols, him would eat what dead and lodged the blood, what a sword bloated and cut, and what were sacrificed for idols. Oh, like the Jewish priests didn't do the same thing. All him work are without justice, yet him have no justice, as him have been who alarm peoples beneath his authority. He would tax them like unto him loved. I'm assuming that means he would tax them as much as he wanted to. And him do all that him loved before him. There are no fearing Jehovah before him, and him live in malice before Jehovah who created him. Him didn't do it like unto him creator, and like unto him did an evil thing upon him companion upon the time him vexed and seized him. Jehovah shall also pay him hardship. As Jehovah has said, I man shall revenge and destroy sinner persons who don't live by my command, that I man might destroy them, name invocation from this world, like unto him destroyed peoples who were preceding him. Him shall revenge and destroy him upon the time when him destroy. Redundant there. And like unto evil persons did evil things, them shall receive them hardship. But being commanded from Jehovah, goodly work shall follow persons who work goodly work. For like unto Aisho destroyed the 5 Canaan kings in a cave in one day, and like unto him made sun stand in Geba, that would be Joseph. I don't remember. And on him, and on by him Pariah, that him might destroy them armies. Sun have stood amidst heaven up till him destroyed Iwiwan and Keniawan, Fiziriwan and Kathiwan and Ibuusiwan armies. And like unto him killed around 20,000 persons at one time. Man, that's a better bullet than the cowboys had in those old movies. And like unto him killed them, and like unto him bound them, making foot from neck. And like unto him killed them in a cave by spear, and like unto him fitted a stone upon them. Tribulation like unto this shall find all persons who sadden Jehovah in their evil work. O thou weak man who art Jehovah, why art thou proud? Thou who art sight up today, being a man are earth ashes tomorrow, and thou wilt totally be worms in thy grave. For thy teacher are Diablos, who return all persons sin hardship toward him self, because him mislead all father Adam, and Sheol will find thee again. And she will find persons who work thy sin. For in firming up him collar of reasoning, and making him wrath self-proud, like unto him refused for bow for Adam, whom the Creator created. Thou also have refused for bow for thy Creator Jehovah, like unto thy teachers Diablos did. Like unto thy preceding fathers who don't know their Creator Jehovah in worship will go toward Gehenna. Thou also will go toward Gehenna. Like unto him revenged and destroyed them, because their evil work that they worked in this world, and like unto them descended toward Gehenna. Thou also will downsend toward the Gehenna like unto them, as thou have aroused him anger, and as thou have neglected for worship Jehovah, who gave thee authority upon the 5 kingdoms. Do it seem for thee that thou will escape from Jehovah authority? Thou don't do this, that thou do him accord. Thus he examined thee. But if thou work goodly work in this world, Jehovah will accomplish all thy work for thee. And he will accomplish and bless all the work thou seized in thy hand for thee. And he will subject thy antiquity of enemies and thy enemies for thee. Thou will be nice in thy enterings and thy proceedings, and in thy childbirth from thy nature, and in thy flocks and in thy fatness, and in all work where thou placed thy hand, and in all that thou thought in thy heart, as authority has been given thee from alongside Jehovah, that thou might do thus, and might work and plant and demolish, all will be commanded for thee. However, if thou won't hear Jehovah's word, nor live firmed up in his law, like unto criminals who were preceding thee, and who don't worship Jehovah by what are due, and who don't believe firmed up in his straight law, there are nothing whereby thou will escape from Jehovah authority, for Jehovah's judgments are truth. All are totally revealed before him, yet there are nothing hidden from before him. Him are who sees the king's authority, and who overturn powerful ones' thrones. He is who liberate those who were debased, and who lift up them who fail. He is who loose those who were bound, and who arouse those who are dead. As pardon due are found from alongside him, upon the time he loved him shall arouse persons whose flesh were demolished and rotten and were like unto dust. And having aroused and judged persons who worked evil work, he will take them toward Gehenna, for they have saddened him. For they are who demolish Jehovah's order and his law, and he will destroy them child from this world. As kind persons' work are more difficult than sinner persons' work, sinner persons don't love that they might live in kind persons' counsel. Like unto heavens were distance from earth, likewise persons' work were distance from evil persons' work. But sinner persons' work are robbery and sin, adultery and iniquity, greed and perfidy work. It are being drunk in iniquity and robbing a person's money. It is quickly going towards shedding a person's blood, and it is going towards destruction that doesn't benefit, and it is making a child weep whose mother and father are dead upon them. It is eating blood and what is dead and lodged, and it is eating camel and boar flesh, and it is going toward a daughter in her blood before she are cleansed, and toward a daughter in childbirth. All this are sinner persons' work. She is Satan's trap that was a wide and prepared path, and that takes toward Gehenna that lived firmed up forever, and toward Sheol. But righteous one's path that were totally narrow are what take towards welfare and innocence and humbleness and fealty and love and prayer and fast and flesh purity, toward keeping from what don't benefit, from eating what a sword bloated and cut and what dead and lodged, and from going toward a youthman we for an adultery and from adultery. Them keep from them what weren't commanded by law, from eating disgusting food, and from all his hated work, and from all the work that Jehovah doesn't love. For sinner persons do all this. As for kind persons, them they distance from all the work that Jehovah doesn't love. Him love them, and shall keep them from all the tribulation like unto trust money. For them keep him order and him law and all that him love. But Satan rules sinner persons. Okay. I'm going to pack it in there because I've spent 4 hours talking and my voice is really fucked up. One thing I want to mention, because Skullbeard and I discovered this later on when we were reading other parts of the text, and I meant to mention this at the beginning, is that because of some contextual issues, we have actually been able to approximately date when this manuscript would have been written. It would have been written sometime in 4th century CE because, and this is rather fascinating, there are a few terms used in it that only appear in other apocryphal works which are dated from the 4th century CE. So this had to be written around then, even though a lot of it reads like it was written sometime BCE. So, just another ex post facto prophecy type stuff, I guess. All right. I'm getting out of here because I've got a lot of editing to do and I need to get off my butt. I've been sitting in this chair for 5 hours now and I'm sore.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzznuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.